all the fun and games of having a live stream. So hi everyone, it's the #Rugby Chat, welcoming all the people from YouTube. Thank you very much for joining me. We'll have a quick little chat and then basically I'll do a Q&A from the live chat. So just let me know or if you've got any questions, whack them on the live chat and we will go from there. So anyway, hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul. And the news that's come out this sort of past week is lots of people talking about the Super Rugby format. So, and whether it should change, how it should change, and all of that kind of business. We've had a lot of the Kiwis, sort of coaches and players, saying that actually, hey, they want to get back to the whole round robin thing. And just to get, hi, Mr. Rugby, hi, Andre, hi, Christian, hi, Jack, hi, everyone who's in the chat. As I said, I'll be talking about the Super Rugby format because I didn't get myself organised. I've got no guests tonight. And then I will basically take questions from the live chat. So if you've got any questions, whack them in the live chat and we'll do a bit of a Q&A basically this evening. Make it a bit different, you know. So we've had people talking about the Super Rugby format, and particularly from New Zealand, the coaches and players have been complaining about the number of derbies, suggesting that these are of higher intensity, causing more injuries, and all of that kind of stuff. So my problem with that is it's the derbies it's the New Zealand derbies in particular that are generating the interest that people actually want to watch, and trying to suggest getting rid of the games that people actually want to watch seems like the wrong way to go for me in that kind of situation. And I think the New Zealand derbies need to stay. And if we're going to have those home and away New Zealand derbies, then we have to have conferences. I know everyone doesn't like conferences, but if there's any kind of attempt to try and reduce the amount of travel, then you've got to have conferences. Otherwise, you're just opening yourself up to more travel, and player welfare and all of that kind of stuff comes into effect. Clearly, so currently we have this season and 2 more seasons to go on the current TV contracts of 2019 and 2020. And there was talk that actually changing the format in 2020 might be a good idea, as it's the year straight after the Rugby World Cup, rather than waiting for 2021. And obviously that requires a number of things. First off, to figure out how they want to change it to. And secondly, then to discuss it with all their broadcast partners about that. Now, if I was a broadcast partner, I'd say, if you want to change it, you've also got to lengthen it as well for me. And that way, tie myself in to get that next contract in on the cheap. So there may be some negotiation issues around that and trying to change things early. Some of the talk, obviously, is the addition of a side from Fiji, and a lot of work being going into that. New Zealand government has done some research on that, and they're suggesting that for that to happen, that they need to have teams in the NPC or the Heartland Championship. Now, Fiji already have a team in the NRC over in Australia, so we'll have to see how that pans out, and whether they actually get a team added to the New Zealand Provincial Championship as well. There's also talk there that they'd actually have to play some of their things over on some of their games outside of Fiji as well, in Australia or in New Zealand, perhaps even in the States, some people have mentioned as well. Now, Line Break Rugby, gutted this isn't a Love Island analysis session. No, this is not a Love Island analysis session, and that's one of the words I've muted on Twitter to try and get rid of that. New innovation, you'll see, people, I can actually pull your comments now onto the show. So if I have good questions, I'll pull them in, and then we can talk about those questions. And also, you can give me feedback on the chat as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether we do get that Fiji or Pacific Island side into the NPC, into the New Zealand domestic setup or not. It's going to be interesting to see how we go. Jack also saying Super 14, please. We're not going to go backward. We're not going to contract that much. If anything, there is going to be Super Rugby expansion, and it's going to be a question of quite how that Super Rugby expansion works. A bit interesting now that actually I've got comments coming up on the screen here, different comments coming up on the screen down there. So I'm not sure if you're all in the same chat or if you're in different chats at the moment. Sorry about that, folks. But Hugh, Fiji Drua has been a great success. And yes, I agree, they have been a great success. I don't think we can go back to, and I say we can't add in Fiji if we are not going to go into, if we're not going to keep the conference format. I see some of the comments that are coming up saying, are we starting? Yes, we have started. So clearly I've got 2 shows live on YouTube. So sorry, folks. One of them appears to be working and the other one doesn't. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Sorry about that, technical issues with that. So the Hugh Rothwell, would World Rugby fund a Fiji team in New Zealand like the NRC? I don't think so. I think New Zealand, the New Zealand government is looking at the amount of influence that China's having in the Pacific Islands, and it's a political reason that New Zealand government are looking at quite how they can support a rugby team in the Pacific Islands, basically to counter that political pressure. So yeah, sorry about that. So no, that's not. I don't think World Rugby will be funding it. I think New Zealand government will be looking at funding a team in there. Hi, Habvive. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to be chatting about Super Rugby format first, but then also throw your own questions in the chat, and I'll do a bit of a Q&A session as well. So Super Rugby is going to is definitely going to be expanding. The question is just whether it's in 2020 or 2021. It's going to be interesting to see what TV deals happen as well. Will Amazon come in to challenge Sky in New Zealand, for example? Amazon has been doing some different some All Blacks documentaries on purpose to try and grow that kind of audience ahead of time. So whether Amazon actually step in for the live coverage or not is going to be interesting. People have said that because Sky owns the outside broadcast team, that anyone else couldn't do it. But actually the outside broadcast team is a wholly owned subsidiary of Sky, and other companies already hire them out for concerts and other shows in New Zealand. So there's no reason why they couldn't hire the outside broadcast bands from Sky to cover that, or even pay Sky to create the coverage for them. So that's kind of yeah. I think Amazon could definitely come into New Zealand and do that. Quite how the Australia, I think, would probably say with Fox. I've not heard of anyone coming in to challenge on that sort of front. Obviously, Sky lost the Rugby World Cup rights, for example, going on in New Zealand, but they will be. So there is that. Sky was saying, they didn't actually generate that many viewers or that many subscriptions. But losing a major sporting event like that in New Zealand is a blow to Sky's image. That's for certain. And we can see that Sky is starting to lose its grip on the sporting landscape. So we're going to talk about expansion. Fiji is going to come in. Are they going to bring back the Force? I mean, the Force has been playing its World Series games and still definitely exists. Would Forrester or Twiggy get behind them and provide the money for it? I don't know, but yes, that's definitely one of the things. Jack, would Spark want to challenge Sky for the rugby rights? I don't think Spark could afford the rugby rights in New Zealand. They are very expensive, but I think Amazon most definitely could. So would they come back? Also, and then we're looking at South Africa. Then we're looking at Argentina, because Argentina definitely want a second Super Rugby team. So if you were to bring the Force back into the Australian conference, that would go up to 6. You could bring Fiji into the New Zealand conference, take it up to 6. Bring a second Argentinian team into the Africa conference, take it up to 6. And that's one way they could look at expanding across the board, going up to 18 teams again. or some other way. But definitely expansion is going to happen, whether it's 2021 or 2020. We'll just have to wait and see. I think with the success that Major League Rugby has had this season, that Major League Rugby is going to grow up to the minimum of 10 teams. It sounds like maybe even 12 next season. I think the rush for the American market has been missed. If you want to hit the American, now they've got their own professional, league going, so I can't see them going over to the States. Jack's saying it's too many teams. I understand where you're coming from, but Argentina and the Jaguares have shown that having one team does not work. If you're trying to support a national team, they need two teams. So I can understand why Argentina are pushing for an extra team. We can all understand why we're pushing for a Fiji Pacific Island Super Rugby team as well. So there are definitely different ways that you can if you want to have those expansions, that's what you're going to have. All right, coming to the end of the Super Rugby structure section. So any questions you have, please throw them in the chat, and we'll do a bit of Q&A session, I say, for the rest of the 45 minutes, or for however long you want to chat for. But I do think that New Zealand teams have got it wrong in trying to reduce the number of derbies. I personally didn't like buying a season ticket for the Blues when I was up there, knowing that actually I would only get to see two of the other franchises. I wouldn't get to see all four playing at Eden Park. That to me was very disappointing. But hey, you can see. So I really think it's the wrong move to be looking at that. Definitely the wrong way for them to go. So yeah, any other questions? Otherwise, I will wrap it up there, as those are the big thing. Derby games over and over is just stupid. People are losing interest. So Andre, the problem there with that is that in South Africa is that the Currie Cup is basically the Super Rugby teams plus plus two others, whereas in New Zealand the NPC is a different set of teams to Super Rugby, and so that's the problem that in South Africa the derbies over and over again is because the Currie Cup looks like basically just season 2 of Super Rugby in the same year, and the way that it could work is if South Africa stopped having such a close tie between the province and the Super Rugby side, and actually had multiple provinces per Super Rugby side, so they split out the players more, and that's part of the that's part of the issue. I think there. Will expansion assist in improving crowds? Well, it definitely will. The Jaguares and the Sunwolves, when they first came in season 1, definitely improved the interest from their point of view. There were a lot of people, having problems with the conference system and the different size conferences, and 3 teams from South Africa and 5 teams from Australasia making it into the finals, and that all got confusing and a mess. I agree. Yeah, that was all wrong, but the teams did. Jack's saying the derbies are the best games to watch. I agree. Who wants to watch the Terrible Sunwolves? Well, the Terrible Sunwolves, who have currently beaten the Bulls, beaten the Sunwolves, beaten the Reds. Beaten the Stormers. No, they can't beat themselves, can they? So so that's certainly something that the Sunwolves are improving. It takes time. Expansion teams aren't successful in year 1. They take time. So the Sunwolves also got their structures wrong. They've had the top leagues season wrong. They've had no pre-seasons so far. So it's all a bit of a mess. Jack, how do we know Sanzar are planning on expanding again? Well, Jack, basically there's been obviously a big push for a Fiji Super Rugby team. That's the New Zealand government has gone and paid for a feasibility study into it. We've seen it. We've seen a lot of the New Zealand coaches and players coming out saying that they want the format to change. So they don't have two lots of derbies. So clearly there is definitely, and they actually said they were going away, and they had looking at when they met last week, I think it was the week before, that they were looking at how they were going to, how the structure would change, whether it would include expansion. Would it stay the same? And so they definitely have been looking at the option of expansion. Now, will they definitely do it? I think they definitely will, but that's a point of view. That's an opinion. That's not a fact. The fact is they are looking at different formats. It's a matter of opinion as to which way and what format it will change to. Couldn't they just cut one of the current teams? Yes. Well, we saw what a palaver that was last year when they were trying to decide which team to cut. It's all good and well saying, oh, we'll just cut a team. The problem is, which team do you cut? You can't cut Sunwolves because it's the only Japanese team. You can't cut the Jaguars. So cutting any other team, New Zealand's not going to offer up to cut a team. And Australia and South Africa are already down to 4 teams. So they're not going to cut down to 3. So no, just cutting a team is not a way to go forward. And Jack just saying, yeah, cut the Sunwolves. No, that's just because they're a new team. They take time to expand. They need the Japan market as well. It's the second or third largest economy in the world. They need the advertising, the marketing, and the TV revenue that comes with that. So there's no way of getting rid of the Sunwolves is ever going to happen. Andre says, cut the Chiefs. 2 times Super Rugby champions, cut them. How can you? Oh, a bit like when they were talking about cutting the Brumbies and keeping the Force. How can you cut the Brumbies who have been champions or made the finals so often? And yet it makes much more sense to cut the Brumbies because let's be honest, Canberra's not a big place. It's near Sydney. It's not very far away. The Waratahs could easily come down and play a game or 1 or 2 of their home games in Canberra to keep the interest there. Whereas, and then you would keep the country spread, but instead they got rid of the Force because hey, you can't get rid of the Brumbies who've been so successful. So no, the uproar in cutting the Chiefs would be too much. We're not going to see that happen, even though out of the New Zealand teams, again, it makes the most sense because let's be honest, Hamilton's not far from Auckland. The Blues could easily play 1 or 2 home games in Hamilton, and there would be no big deal for them. They normally do play a game out of Eden Park up in Albany anyway, so they could definitely go and play a game down in Hamilton quite comfortably. But so yes, that's part of the problem. Yeah, Hugh goes, I get the arguments for cutting the Brumbies. And yet, to me, the most logical one to get rid of, or if you take emotion out of it, was the Brumbies in Australia. But emotion is part of it, and hence that's why the Force got the cut and the Brumbies didn't, essentially, when it comes down to it. Hugh says, yeah, the Brumbies were given the southern half of New South Wales when they were created. Yeah, exactly. So why can't the Waratahs go play a game or 2 down there? As I say, it's not that far to travel. I think that's got through everything on there. Some other news that's come out today is that both Rico and Akira Ioane have signed for the Blues. So they're going to be staying at the Blues, not going to move to another franchise. Myself, I've not actually seen how long that contract is for. Apparently, all the Super Rugby teams were given the option to sign Akira and have a chat with him. And in the end, he's decided to stay up in Auckland. To a certain degree, I think that makes sense. We've got 2 guys who are quite young still, staying around their support networks and their family, who generally kept them on the straight and narrow. To me, it seems like a good idea for them, rather than heading off to somewhere new. Sure, the Blues aren't necessarily the most the most successful side and the best side at developing players. But Tanaranga is supposed to be improving the situation. This season, he has been hurt by injuries, and they haven't coped with it as well as other teams. The Chiefs obviously have also had a lot of injuries and coped very well. So have the Crusaders. The Blues, though, absolutely do need to have their first team. They cannot cope. They don't have the systems in place, the structures to lose players in the same way that the Chiefs and the Crusaders have been able to this season. We've seen a bit with the Hurricanes that when they've been missing a few players, they've struggled and they've lost their form recently. I don't know how much that might also be associated with the changing coach, with the head coach Boyd moving on. I don't know if that's got anything to do with things going on down there, or how much influence Plumtree is having. Obviously, he's the next head coach next year. We'll have to see. Andre, great news to the Blues to keep the Silence Brothers. It is. It's absolutely essential. If the Blues were to have lost those two players, you've got to say it'd be very difficult for them to sign anybody else. Everyone else will be looking at moving as well, I think. So I'd say I think it's a good move for them, and it's obviously massive news for the Blues. So yeah, those are the kind of the key news items that I've seen coming up. A bit of a correction. I think I've been saying that the Waratahs are playing the Hurricanes in the final game of the season. They're not. They're playing the Brumbies. So they've got the Sunwolves and the Brumbies. Sorry about that. I managed to kind of get myself confused on there. So sorry that I've quoted that a few times in the last couple of videos. Waratahs clearly looking odds on to top the Australia Conference now that they got that win over the Rebels. And if they also, if they go well, they have got a chance of getting even a second seed. But currently the Jaguares, with their game in hand, are looking perhaps odds on to go above the Lions and to get that second seed. And having a home quarter final for the Jaguares in year 3 would be absolutely amazing for them. Be a fantastic result, I say, for them. And so let's look forward to that. As Paul said last Friday night, they need a world-class 10. Yes, the Chiefs do need a world-class. Sorry, the Blues do need a world-class 10. That's very true. So yeah. So anyway, Tars should top the Australian Conference. Crusaders should top the New Zealand Conference now that the Hurricanes lost last weekend to the Brumbies. And you've got a question with that win by the Chiefs over the Highlanders. It's getting very tasty for that second, third and fourth position in the New Zealand Conference. All three of them should make it into the quarterfinals. Still, over on the other side, it's going to be a matter of can the Sharks catch the Rebels, and that's the big question. I think it is down to I think it's basically nine teams heading up, aiming for those 8 places. Jaguares win at the weekend should close the gap nicely on the Lions, and should give them puts them in the driving seat, probably in South Africa with that game in hand. So there we go. That's the 2 home games of the Tars to finish 2. Yep, Hugh, you're right. You say Sunwolves and Brumbies. That should see them home quite comfortably. Sorry for those that got caught through technical issues. Sorry, I had 2 YouTube shows running. I don't know how that kind of happened. Sorry about that. Hopefully we will. I'll try and rectify that going forwards, and we'll look into that. And also, I'll try and be more organised about getting guests as well. We'll be back with the All Blacks edition tomorrow night. Ashwin will be joining me for that one, and I think I've got Herman on that show as well. And then we're back. And then on Thursday, obviously I'll be previewing the Super Rugby games for this coming weekend. Probably will not be doing a post-match review on Friday night because it's comedy night down here in New Plymouth, so I think I'll go to the comedy night. But I will be back on Saturday night with post-match reaction to the Saturday night New Zealand game at 7:35. Well, it'll be 9:30 after the game, and then also I'll be doing post-match reaction to the Major League Rugby final on Sunday. So have a look out for that game, which will be live on Facebook Live for those people outside of the US, and I'll be live straight after that game with post-match reaction on Periscope and YouTube. I'll be using this new technology that I've got. So thank you, everybody. Please hit the like, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. Share with your friends. And sorry about the technical issues and lack of guests this evening.